to Cards and Sharps. I have here a Spyderco Pacific Salt with its new H1 rust-proof steel blade. And, well, tell you what, if you got a knife that's claiming to be rust-proof and all that, table is not the best place to maybe try it out. Let's see if maybe we can find someplace a little more appropriate. Okay, yeah, this is more like it. We're here in Galveston, Texas at the Gulf Coast, where we actually have salt water to test out the Pacific Salt knife. Alright, we're doing a little experiment. We have, of course, salt water here, and also have in my pocket just a inexpensive regular steel knife, and we are going to dip it both of them in salt water, put them in baggies. But while we're here in Galveston, we're going on a cruise. It will be gone a week. Come back, I'll pull them from the baggie. I'm not going to dry them or I'm not going to clean them. I'm not going to soak them in water in the baggie, but I'll put them in the baggie wet. And after a week, we'll take them out and see how they both fare. This is the salt, and we'll discuss when I get to the table the steel and makeup of it and some of the specs on it. Alright, let's try it. Okay, they're both have been dropped in the salt water. And I'll now put them in a baggie and see if I can find my baggie. Here they are. One for the salt, one for the standard knife. I'm not going to soak them in the water, but they are both still wet, and the bag will keep them from drying out. And we'll see what the salt water does to them after a week. Alright, let's head to the table and have a look. Alright, well, you seen me at the ocean trying it out in the salt water. Both of these knives got a saltwater bath, and the main star of this video is going to be the Pacific Salt and this inexpensively built but hardy knife. Alright, both of these knives they were submerged in the Gulf of Mexico and then placed in these baggies and just thrown in the trunk of the car while me and my wife went on a cruise for 7 days. Then we drove home, and it has since been 4 or 5 days since we returned home that I'm doing this, and we're going to see what these look like out of the baggies. Whatever moisture was carried into the bag with them appears to have dissipated. I don't see any moisture in there anymore. All right, let's pull out this Wartech knife. This is an old knife picked up at like you see for sale for $5 to $10 at your flea markets. Pretty sturdy knife. Ooh, that don't sound good. Could be a little sand or maybe some dried salt in there or in the pivot area, but it also just sounds rough. And this was a pretty smooth operating knife, albeit somewhat worn. You could just kind of almost flick it open and it would open. But it's definitely got I don't know if you can hear that, but a grindy sound. And it's got some rust spots appearing, and actually just really look like just surface rust that would probably just buff right off there. This is 440 stainless. And being stainless, 440 stainless, it should have some ability to withstand rust and all that, just in the nature of stainless steel. But it does exhibit some rust here. I'm thinking a piece of steel wool would probably knock that off. They're pretty gunky looking around the thumb stud, so very more heavier looking rust around that. And that, I'm going to say that is probably from the stud screws not being stainless and bleeding out around there. Definitely is showing some effects of the salt water. And like I said, the action is kind of rough now. Probably could take it apart and clean it a little and maybe oil it, and it would get some of it back. But it does appears to be maybe some rust in there on the pivot area, and it's just looking pretty gunky in there. So it's still looks a little, maybe a little bit dampened still in there. So I'm going to say just the dunk test. This knife is not one you'd want to use every day cutting fish or doing where it's getting salt water on it very regularly. If you did, you'd have to, I'd say, take it home and clean it out real good and oil it every day. But that's pretty much what we expected. It was an inexpensive knife. All right, well, let's get the Pacific Salt out and see if it shows any effects. Again, there's seems to be no moisture left in the bag whatsoever. The knife looks clean. No visible rust at all. And looking down in the works, don't see any rust. Might see a little bit of dried salt in there, which is appropriate for the Pacific Salt. See how the action feels. Action feels good on it. Feels like it did pretty much when I pulled it out of the box, just before it got dunked. And no really visible signs at all that it was exposed to salt or salt water. So I would say, neither one of them was heavily tested, but I'm going to say this one would probably, from what I'm seeing here, I would feel comfortable in, it was immersed in salt water and then put in a baggie to set for a week's time or over a week's time, and doesn't show any signs at all that it was exposed. So I'm going to say that would mean you could use it on a regular basis, getting it in salt water and it not going to show any effects. And I really didn't expect it to. I didn't think they would market this H1 as being salt proof unless it was. All right, let's talk a little bit now that we've done the little test on it. Let's just talk about some of the specs. Let me get these bags out of my way. All right, this is not a heavy knife. It weighs in at 3 ounces, which for my personal preferences, 4 inches and 4 ounces and less are what I prefer for pocket carry. Overall length though is 8.625, so it's a good size knife with a blade of 3.81. So you get a lot of blade, and the thickness is 0.13. not an overly thick blade. It's got a thick spine, but it narrows down with this hollow grind. It's a clip point, satin finish, and as we discussed, it's H1 steel, which is supposed to be a good quality steel with the extra corrosion resistance or corrosion proof. What else? Oh, it's got the FRN handle, much like those of you that are familiar with the venerable Delica. Has a similar pattern, so it has that same Delica feel to it as far as grip. And it's got the nice ramp with the jimping on it, which I do like. Now some of the Spyderco products have the finger choil in the front, and I would like a lot better if it had that on this. With a blade that size, I like to be able to choke up on it if I'm doing some detail work. But this is a knife made, I believe, for working. It's a knife that you could take diving, and if you needed to use it underwater, it's strong enough. You could do a little bit of prying with it. You can cut rope if you need to. You could cut anything you need to on a boat. You're out fishing and clean fish. Pretty much any chore you'd want to do. It's going to be big enough and sturdy enough to handle that, and substantial enough. And I don't think it was made with small detail work in mind. So I think for what it was designed to be, it's meeting that. Fit and finish. These are made in Seiki City, Japan, just like the Delica, and we expect good workmanship and quality out of those that come out of Seiki City, and this one feels like it meets that expectation. You can definitely tell it's in the Delica family. Delica, Endura, whatever, those range, more Endura size, and has the fit and finish is good. Everything's tight. Blade centering is almost dead on center, maybe biased a little bit to the one side, but not much. It's doesn't have a lot of extra room in there, so pretty much, I'm gonna say it's centered. It can be left or right. And it's got this unique looking screw that will hold the clip on, but it's going to be tip up only, which is fine with me. That's the only way I carry. And as far as action, it's got the spider hole for opening. As I find with most of these style of Spyderco knives, with the lock back, it's a little stiff. They're all usually seem to be very stiff coming out of the box. This Delica I've had a while, has a lot looser action now. It was very stiff when I first got it. I didn't play with the screw adjustments or anything on the pivot. Just let it get loosened naturally from use, and I feel like this one would probably loosen up with use as well. Don't know that this will be a keeper for me, since I don't go deep sea fishing. I'm not usually hanging out at the coast needing a knife. And as far as fishing local lakes and things like that, it might be handy for that. But I have used the Delica and several other knives for those kind of purposes, and never had any issues with them. Usually, if I've gone fishing and used them in that capacity, I will have cleaned them. I'll clean them up a little bit soon as I get home. So, though, you know, fresh water and being exposed to fresh water and salt water are two different things, definitely, as far as corrosion goes. Salt will corrode things before you get a chance to even clean it if it's not a good material. All right, what else? Knife just has a good feel. I mean, for its size, it's got a good weight, and the balance is nice, and it feels really good in the hand. Just definitely larger than what I would typically carry in my pocket, unless I was out specifically going fishing or hunting or maybe camping. You know, I will go with larger knives then, but on an everyday basis, not a size of knife that I would carry. But again, this knife wasn't necessarily designed for that. It's designed to be a working knife, and for that, I think it would fit the bill. It seems like it would fit the bill very nicely. Definitely held up to some light seawater exposure. So if any of you out there have used them and abused them in real world, real use type situations, let us know. We'd like to know. I'd like to know if they do hold up as advertised in the real world applications. All right, well, that's all I got. That is the Spyderco Pacific Salt, new H1 steel. We'll see you guys next time.